Hello, everybody, and welcome to Drew and Chase Side by Side. I am Drew.
I'm Chase.
And today we picked the year 1991. And the albums we got are...
From Athens, Georgia. It's the seventh album by R.E.M, Out of Time. And then from the Pacific Northwest, their second album, Nirvana's Nevermind.
So those are the two albums we're kind of putting side by side, and we're going to kind of take a deeper look into and see if there's any comparisons or any similarities, any differences, anything like that. So let's kind of get into it. So R.E.M, Out of Time, it was released March 12th of 91, and like Chase had just mentioned, it was their seventh studio album. And for them, it seemed like this was a pretty pivotal album for them. It seemed like they were able to gain a lot of mainstream success from this without losing their kind of key hardcore fan base that they've kind of cultivated over the years. I'm not really familiar with how long they've been around, but 7 albums, I would assume they've been doing it for a while. So to finally gain that mainstream success without losing that hardcore fan base is pretty big in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. And like R.E.M, I think they started in like 79 or 80 or something. So yeah,
Okay.
they had about 11 years. And yeah, this was, I think, their second album on a major label. So it was like, I think their first one, they still were kind of keeping the indie alternative college rock vibe that had kind of like gained them attention, but they weren't necessarily like in the mainstream yet. But I think their previous album, I think it's called Green, was like, you could hear the transitions that they were moving towards, and then this album kind of like catapulted that, and then the one that followed, Automatic for the People, like they were like doing arenas by that point.
And that was the one that was released even later in 91 as well? Because they released 2 in 91 when I was looking.
Okay, so yeah, it was either late 91 or here looking at it. Well, no, this is saying a video feature compilation. And then they released a best of. But then I think Automatic for the People came out in 92. And then that had Man on the Moon, which was the big song with that Jim Carrey movie.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so like, but I mean, obviously on Out of Time, Losing My Religion, they became like huge. Like,
yeah.
It was the start of like that, like catapult to the top for them.
And what I found interesting just about this album before we even get into really any of the songs was the fact that they used the physical copy of the album to promote voting and to have people kind of register or get registered through the DMV. So I just found that really interesting, how they were kind of utilizing their platform to kind of create a movement and do their part or do what they think was right. So that was interesting in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. And then like, yeah, kind of jumping into like the actual album. And then I think the fact that, on the first track they have KRS-One, I think they even bridged fans with that, like, to say, and so that even that, like, to what you're saying about the like kind of political impact of that, like, there was a couple different like political things happening, like with them also involving like some hip hop and like that kind of like sense of like it was the 90s and hip hop was definitely starting to like become a thing, more into the mainstream, like not quite like what it has become and what it would, but it was starting to like gain a lot more attention.
It was starting to bubble, yeah.
And I read something about that, like their record label did not want them to include KRS-One.
It seemed like a lot of fans at first didn't even like it. It seemed like there was a lot of kind of controversy with it. I mean, listening to that song, it starts out the album, right? And it's just interesting because, not saying that he doesn't fit, but it's just you know, it's just one of those things that, okay, you could do with or without.
Right.
And, you know, I think the more you listen to it, I think the more it'll grow on you. But the first time around, I was like, okay, like, why is KRS One here? But, like, it makes sense when you point it out, because he was is a very political rapper, to kind of have him open up with them on the album and kind of make this statement with the underlying thing of the physical copies having the voting registration. So
Right, and I mean, I don't know a ton about KRS-One. I mean, I know the name and stuff and a couple songs, but, like, for him to sing on a song called Radio Song, and I know that song's not, like, necessarily, like, I don't know if that was a big single for them or not, but he wasn't a radio guy, so kind of at the end when, like, he's going, like, he's talking about being, like, slaves, essentially, to, like, the radio, like, masters or whatever. It's like it's kind of cool, because I think he, like, has almost always stayed true to his, like, I'm gonna just put out what I want.
Always.
I don't care if it's, like, on the radio. I don't care if it, like, sells. Like, I want to do this for me. I want to like tell my story. I want to promote my message. And I think that kind of is like a good artist to have on a song like that, even though they were like, because then you go into the next song, which was, like, a massive hit. But it's like, it's kind of saying, like, you know, where the state of the radio is. Even though I personally think that song is very, like, radio friendly, because it's got the funky, like, kind of, like, guitar riff and stuff. It reminds me of, like, Talking Heads and, like, David Bowie's Fame. And, yeah, it's just got that kind of, like, funky, like, weird, very 80s, like, kind of jive to it. So maybe they're, like, playing, like, on that idea and stuff, and they're just saying, like, this is, like, kind of what's going on and stuff. So, but yeah, I thought it was a good song, but I don't think it's the best on the album.
yeah, that was my opinion too. I don't think there really was a bad song. It had a very consistent sound all the way through. It had a real good feel to it. Like, there was some, like, I don't want to say ominous feel to it, but just that experimental kind of feel to it.
Definitely.
And it seemed like they definitely found their sound and were having fun and just having a good time creating. And yeah, that's just my opinion, and you could tell throughout the whole album it was a solid listen all the way through. You know, there's a couple, like, standalones, like you said. The intro song, Radio Song, is just, it's not the best, but it's a pretty good album, a pretty solid album all the way through.
Definitely. Yeah, and then to go into, you know, the next song, Losing My Religion.
Yeah.
Obviously, I mean, I've known that song for a long time. And it's just one of those songs. It's catchy. It's got the, like, centered around the, like, mandolin guitar riff and stuff. And it's just, like, simple driving beat and good melody and stuff. And I watched the video, and it's a weird video, but I guess it won a bunch of awards and stuff like that. Yeah. But yeah, the song itself is interesting, because I never really knew what it meant, I guess. Like, and when you look it up, it's like, I guess that's, like, a southern term for, like, losing your temper.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, that makes sense. And it definitely seems like it's, like, a relationship song. And so he's kind of losing it in the relationship, which, you know, I think is which is very, like, you know, relatable.
Yeah. Yeah, that's, you know, definitely one of the songs that resonated with me right away, you know, especially being the second song on the album. But another thing I really liked, I believe it was called Endgame. Just that in the middle of the album, just threw on, like, an instrumental.
Yeah.
And just kind of was jamming and vibing out. And that was one that I really enjoyed. And I really liked how they ended the album too with Me and Honey. Mm-hmm. I just thought that was a good ender. But
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I thought Endgame was cool. Yeah, I was like, had that melancholy, like, kind of vibe, but, like, I love the, like, beautiful, like, melody of the guitar and, like, everything that was going on. I thought it was a good transition from Near Wild Heaven, but then to go into like Shiny Happy People, which kind of started that way, and then, you know, Shiny Happy People kind of just turned into this massive like pop song reminiscent of like Beatles. Like I don't know if they were nodding at the Beatles, but you know, they're doing the love me, which is like 8 days a week kind of thing. So like I definitely like saw that. And then on the other song too, I can't remember which one, but he's like Blackbird backwards, and that's like, again, I don't know if that's a reference to the Beatles or not.
Okay.
But there's definitely that like
feel
like yeah, those like kind of like similarities and stuff. And like I guess they don't like Shiny Happy People too much because they're like, it's just like a stupid pop song for kids or whatever. But I'm a sucker for those kind of songs, so like I thought it was like very catchy and like stuck in my head. And
yeah, it was. What I found interesting about that song is just in the middle they completely switch up the whole sound and everything, and
transitions nice.
But it seemed like they were almost in the middle of the sentence still, and then it just transitioned. So I just found that a little interesting. It to me it wasn't the smoothest transition, but it was interesting to give it a whole new feel to the same song.
Right.
But yeah, overall though, I enjoyed the album all the way through.
Yeah, and I think like the song "Belong" was really good too.
Yeah,
and that one I don't, because he's just kind of talking. I mean, they do the like backup vocals or like the singing. They're not really saying anything. It's just the singing of like whatever. But like he's like telling some sort of story about like creatures crawling back to the sea, and the barricades won't hold. I don't really know what that's like referencing or what that's talking about, but like I like the kind of like doomy vibe that song kind of has. Like it's kind of like the album has weird like ups and downs for sure, because it's like it starts with Radio Song, then Losing My Religion, which is kind of like that minor kind of key sad song, and then it goes to Low, which is that kind of like primitive, like just guitar and like organ, I think. And it's very like, just like a driving, like simple driving song, but like not much is going on. And then, they like kind of shift, and it like Near Wild Heaven, another beautiful, like kind of like guitar work song and stuff and all that. But, and then, like I really liked Country Feedback and Me and Honey for sure. Like Me and Honey, like I didn't really understand everything that was going on. It seems like he's like talking about a relationship, and then like at the end he like mentions having a baby. I don't know if that was necessarily like accurate, like if he was actually having a child at this point in his career or whatever.
Gotcha.
But like you said, I thought the whole album was definitely like strong and stuff. And like I was saying, I always wanted to get more into R.E.M. and like dig deep into their catalog and stuff. And I've listened to like some of their earlier stuff, like Murmur, and a couple of their other earlier albums. But like after listening to this, I'm like, it gives me more of a reason, more of an excuse to kind of try and like go find those gems that they've recorded prior and then afterwards.
Yeah, same. Like listening to this, I'm definitely going to go back and listen to this album probably a couple more times because I really enjoyed it. And then, like you're saying, it gives me an excuse to kind of go back and kind of see where they were, and then kind of see the progression, and then kind of see what happened afterwards and from that point. So it definitely surprised me. I was not really familiar with them before. I knew obviously Losing My Religion from just being on the radio and music video and all of that here and there, but definitely not familiar, but I was definitely surprised by this album.
Yeah. Definitely.
So let's move on to Nevermind from Nirvana. Which was released September 24th of 91.
Yeah, and obviously, Nirvana Nevermind, it was the album that, launched their career. They got signed to a major label and, blew up after it. And, Smells Like Teen Spirit is just it's one of those songs. It's like a generation defining, and it's like I think every generation since, like there's still like groups of kids that really love that song and stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's one of those albums, like it definitely like encompassed a lot of what was going on, especially up in the Pacific Northwest. And you know, they weren't the first grunge band by any means, and like it's funny, like I don't know if you would even call them a grunge band. Like, yeah, they got looped into it and stuff, but
to me it didn't sound like it. Listening to this album, I was surprised at that, because I've definitely listened to this album before, but always hearing that they're this grunge band and then actually focusing on this album, I'm like, I don't necessarily hear that. I hear more of a alternative and punk influence, for sure.
And that's the thing, like that grunge term, like I don't know where it came from, or like how it necessarily started, because it's like I think there was like a theme like of grunge bands, quote unquote, but like you had like, I think Soundgarden had released their album before, like a couple years prior to this, and I think they had more of like a psychedelic influence and stuff. And then Pearl Jam kind of always, I think they had more of like a classic rock influence.
Yeah.
They had like the big guitar riffs and like all that. But yeah, Nirvana, they always seemed to have more of the punk influence, in my opinion. And I mean, Kurt was very vocal about that, like, you know, like hanging around with the Melvins up there, and you know, he dated one of the members of Bikini Kill, and just like the whole, just a lot of like punk ethics and ethos like surrounded that band and stuff. So, but this album did have big production. Like, I listened to it like on a speaker, and then I like put in headphones, and like I think listening to it with headphones, you can really hear just like how clean the bass and drums really sound, and just like how much they pop, and like just how like clean and crisp it is, compared to like their prior release, which was Bleach, which was very like dirty sounding and very, and then even afterwards, like their follow-up album In Utero was very much like kind of like in between the two, I guess, like production wise. So
and this was their second studio album.
And they had released something before, but it wasn't like a full album, Incesticide. It was like I think it had some originals and or some like B-side kind of outtakes and stuff, but it was their actual like second studio album, first on a major label.
And kind of like R.E.M, it seemed like they were able to find more of that mainstream success with this album without losing too many of their hardcore fans that have been with them for the previous album. And you know, having those hits, Smells Like Teen Spirit, Come As You Are, you know, that those big hits that kind of popped off, it just shows kind of how music has progressed, because once you get a hit nowadays, people are kind of like over it. But back then it seemed like they gravitated towards it, and it really helped artists.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I read a story about where Smells Like Teen Spirit, like that, the title came from. So like I was saying before, he was dating, I forget her name, but one of the members of the band Bikini Kill. And I think Dave Grohl was dating another member, I think Kathleen Hanna, if I'm correct. And they would all hang out and stuff, and I guess Kathleen Hanna spray painted, I guess it was a deodorant, but I guess she spray painted in Kurt's room, Kurt Cobain Smells Like Teen Spirit, which Teen Spirit was a deodorant.
Oh, okay.
That the girl in Bikini Kill wore. So it was like, but he saw it as something clearly different. Like it was like this message to him, I guess. And obviously that's a great song title to like encompass like a generation of kids that like
that's
are
interesting.
Angsty and stuff.
Yeah, I never knew where that title came from. Actually, listening to it, I was wondering, why is it named?
Yeah, because it doesn't. He's not singing that at any point in the song.
Yeah. What are a couple other songs that you liked, or what's your kind of breakdown on this album.
Yeah, so I mean, I honestly I liked every song. I mean, except maybe like the very last one, Endless Nameless. It's kind of, I don't know. It's not bad, but it's just kind of like added at the end.
At the very end, yeah.
Didn't do much.
But I did like how they had that hidden track. Like, I
Yeah.
found that pretty interesting. Like, I was listening to it online and I wasn't sure because it said it was like a 20-minute ender or something like that. And then it just ended. I was like, something's coming. And then I just kept it going. And then a few minutes later, it popped back up. And that's kind of how it ended. And yeah, I that was a surprise for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, the first three songs, you know, they're probably the biggest from the album. You know, Smells Like Teen Spirit, In Bloom, which had, like, the big guitar riffs and stuff, really catchy. And what I think they really, like, did so well on this album, especially, like, the first couple songs, is, like, the loud, quiet dynamic. And they would, you know, either start quiet and build or start loud and then go quiet for a verse or whatever. And they just like, they take you on this roller coaster and really just like, I mean, they're not the first band to do that. I mean, I know he gave a lot of credit to the Pixies and that's definitely where that sound comes from. But like, they really like were figuring it out at this point. Another thing I found interesting was the first three songs he references guns, which you know, obviously, people that know the story, it's just
we
kind
all know what happened.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that like I never realized that in that order, and I think those were the last three songs recorded for the album, and then the fact that they got put first was interesting.
That is interesting.
And then yeah, like to go into like Breed, that's just like a punk song, like it's just like, but a big chorus, like I really like. It's just like very like drawing kind of like verses and then like a huge chorus.
I found the song structure on most of these songs very interesting. Like the chorus was way longer than the verses usually, and again, that's just something you don't see nowadays.
Yeah, and then to go into Lithium, which that song just.
That's one of my favorites on the album.
That's just about depression, obviously. It just, I think, encompasses a lot of that. And, yeah, the melody's great, though. Like, just how the bass, like, kind of carries the song in that one. And then just, like, yeah, that song's, like, very heavy. I think people that,
I was actually reading about that one, and from my understanding, he said it's about finding religion as a last resort to everything going on. And you can, once you have that in mind, you can definitely hear it in the lyrics.
Yeah.
And that was definitely one of my favorite songs on the album, for sure.
Well, and I think, like, the fact that it's called Lithium, too, which is, like, a mood-stabilizing kind of drug, where it's, like, yeah, it just kind of balances things out.
He definitely mentioned that he was putting personal touches into it, but it was more about, I believe he said like a roommate or something like that. Like the main story, his roommate and his roommate's girlfriend or something like that, but also putting his personal touches to it as well, you know.
And then, yeah, to go into Polly, that's a very heavy song as well.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure you read the story or heard about it from someone about like a 14-year-old girl basically getting kidnapped and raped and tortured with a blowtorch. And yeah, just like, it's very metaphorical, but like, it's like, yeah, it's hard because it's like, I think, like that kind of stuff happens. And like back then, like, you know, it was probably like, less in the media, I guess I would say. Whereas like now, you know, like we just have so much more access to information and stuff. And for him to kind of like shine a light on that, like I think is like cool, but like, yeah, it's still like a hard song to like, you know, as a, like if someone's a victim, I guess.
Yeah.
And then Yeah, the next couple ones, Territorial Pissings, and
That one I wasn't the biggest fan of.
yeah. I mean, it's kind of like it's kind of just a whatever song.
So, like, and I guess you can take it by the name. It was just it seemed like they were just trying to leave their mark on that
Yeah.
song. You know what I mean? Just trying to just get it out and just yeah. And
Yeah.
I guess the song title is perfect for it. But yeah, I just wasn't the biggest fan of
Yeah.
that song.
Yeah, and then Drain You. I think that one was good because that's kind of another like relationship song, kind of being like dependent on someone and like them feeding you and like getting in your infection. Like
Yeah.
it's very much like about being like completely immersed in
Codependency.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then Lounge Act, I think that one he had mentioned before, you know, was about a relationship with you know, the girl I keep forgetting from Bikini Kill, I forget
Gotcha.
her name. But yeah, that one solid song. Then Stay Away. Again, another very punk influenced song, kind of not like he's not saying much in that one. He's just like says something and then like repeats the same thing after each call and response kind of thing. I just thought it was interesting. I don't know if you caught it at the very end, like he's shouting "Stay away" quite a few times.
Yeah.
And then the very last line it says "God is gay."
Yeah, there was a lot of controversy with
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, and that one like, I mean, he I guess like had been arrested for like spray painting cars and stuff, and like writing like, yeah, God is gay or like. So I guess he was an interesting guy because he was like, had referenced that time like he would, if he wasn't with Courtney Love, he would be bisexual. He wishes he was born gay, like all these things because he's just like, I think, fed up with like kind of like, I don't know, like the whole like way I guess women are treated. He was very like a vocal feminist, I guess, and stuff, and was very much like about that. So I guess that makes sense. Like he was like I guess trying to like, I guess by saying God is gay, like I guess like that little still punk like angsty like you know like I'm gonna just throw this in there at the last second. Like if you catch it, you catch it. If you don't, you don't. And then like yeah, when they close out the album, you know, On a Plane, I think that's, you know, another drug song, like drug, depression, being selfish, like, you know, he's like, he knows it's wrong kind of thing, and he knows like it's like taking its toll and stuff like that, but like he doesn't care. Like he's like, I'm on a plane, like I'm good where I'm at kind of thing. And then Something in the Way, you know, it's just that dark acoustic kind of doesn't close out the album, but closes out the album.
I like that one too. Yeah.
And that's kind of about like it takes you. He really takes you there. I think that's some good like some of his stronger like songwriting and storytelling, because he's taking you to the bridge he was living under and like being homeless and living off of like what's there and the tarp springing a leak, and it's just very like grungy, I guess, if you want to go back to that word, like because you can just picture like Washington and like just rainy and like gray all the time, and then like living under a bridge, kind of just like it takes you there for sure. It kind of encompasses that vibe.
Yeah, so and then we already touched on Endless and Nameless. So to me overall, I really enjoyed the album. Again, it's one that I'm gonna have to go back and listen to multiple times, because I know I've heard it growing up and stuff, but actually like digesting it like full on, it was a solid album all the way through. Like I said, I wasn't the biggest fan of Territorial Pissings, and then the ending, Endless Nameless, like you were touching on, just not the best, but again, still a solid album all the way through. And yeah, what are your final thoughts on this album?
Yeah, great. Like I think, like most people, I think it's a classic. It for a reason. I think it definitely like encompasses like that time, and like but it's held up very well. And I, not recently, but I used to really listen to a lot of Bleach and In Utero. So this one definitely just like fits in there well. I don't know if it's my favorite of the three, but I don't think any of them really are bad. So that's that's a good mark for any artist to have three solid albums in a row. So I think that like really like sums up like what Nirvana and what Kurt Cobain was as a songwriter. So
yeah, and I mean, I find it very interesting that we chose both of these artists and these bands, because me not knowing really much about either one, but them having a personal connection, like Michael Stipe. Michael Stipe and Kurt Cobain. Kurt Cobain, I guess, really looked up to him and actually made him the godfather of his daughter.
Yeah, I saw that. I read that.
So, and he was really trying to help him out when he was going through his downward spiral, it seemed like. And I know you were mentioning before we started talking that he was going to be helping him on an album.
Yeah, so I don't know if Kurt had sent him some demos or if he was planning on doing it, but from what Michael had said was like, we were going to work on this album and it was like going to be acoustic and it was going to be great, and he was like pretty upset when he found out that like he killed himself. I know that sounds selfish for him to say that, but like I guess he was going to work with Kurt was going to work with R.E.M. I didn't say if that was going to be the next Nirvana album or if that was just going to be some Kurt solo stuff or whatever, but it's like I wonder if those exist and what even the demos sound like, or if they have ever been leaked or streamed or whatever, or if it was just him saying like Kurt had these ideas, he was gonna send me them or whatever. So I thought it was interesting too. And I had seen another thing that Kurt had said too. He's like, if only I could write like a couple songs as good as R.E.M, like I would be set. Like, so it's just like, knew nothing about, except that they were like alternative bands.
Exactly.
But didn't know that there was any real sort of like
actual connection.
Link or connection. So that's why this is kind of cool, because it's like, even if it's not right there on the surface, when you do a little digging, you can find some like coincidences or some interesting little like treasures along the way.
Definitely. So I think that's gonna wrap it up. I think we pretty much summed it all up. My final thoughts are both albums are great all the way through. Again, I have my little particulars about each album, but again, pretty solid all the way through, and I would definitely recommend both of them. And it's definitely going to give me an excuse to go check out both of these bands a little bit more, for sure.
Definitely.
So, that'll be it. And until next time, peace.